Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this new webinar of Veggie for Standards. Happy Monday, happy start of the week. We are very pleased to have a new episode, let's say, of our series of webinars on the green and digital transition. My name is Maria Giuffrida. Together with my colleague Sabrina from Trust IT, we have been organizing over the past month, over a month, this series of thematic webinars, and we will have our third episode, actually the fourth, if we consider also materials that are not presented in the form of a webinar for this series. For those who don't know and maybe have not attended previous webinars from our project, just a few words about Edu for Standards. It's a CSA, a coordination and support action funded by the European Union. As the name suggests, it's a webinar, a project about boosting education about standardization. So our first objective is to increase actually the number of higher education institutes that offer teaching on standardization courses, materials, and other type of resources. Increase also the awareness and knowledge and the skills of people. So increase the number of trainers and teachers that can offer courses about standardization. Disseminate the material that we have produced as a project also by our external network. And there are finally other objectives in terms of engagement and visibility of the initiative via the organization of dedicated events, such as the academic standard days that we're doing in many European countries, and also via other events such as the webinar we have today. And finally, we will set up a standardization students association in Europe. So you see some of the main results of the projects connected with these objectives at the center of the slide in purple. So we have produced the innovative teaching concept of standardization, guiding us on how to develop courses about this topic. Then we are testing this concept through various pilots at different level in master courses, bachelor courses, also in company training and other type of courses. And then we will have, our final legacy, which is the association, as I was mentioning, but also everything that is produced in terms of outreach, reports, synergy, and community in our web platform. So coming to today's event. As I was saying, we are now today, 8th of June, in Module 4 on ISO 14001 as an instrument to promote the green transition in the EU. We have the pleasure to have Claudia Suarez as a speaker on this topic, and I will leave her the floor in a moment. But I just want you to have a look also at the program that we have put together. We've had already two webinars, one on 28th of April by our colleague Nizar from Politecnico di Milano. And then in end of May, we had a second module on privacy, data protection and standards by Polytechnic University of Madrid. Then we have already available on a module 3, only slides and video on our website, and we will share the link in the chat soon. And today we have the ISO 14001. We have another two webinars already scheduled for the month of June, and a few others will arrive between August and October. Okay, and if you want to also contribute to this series of webinars or materials about the topic, just let us know and we will include you in the program. Just a few final notes regarding housekeeping. The event is being recorded. We will share the slides and the recording on the Edu for Standards website within next week. We will try to make this a little bit interactive, allowing you to ask questions or maybe put any resource that's relevant for the webinar in the chat, or also just introduce yourself and the reason why you're here and any comment you have using the chat or the Q&A box placed in the toolbar of Zoom. We will, in order not to disrupt the flow of the presentation, we will ideally leave the questions at the end. But feel free to write them whenever you have them in mind. And if we see that there are many questions, maybe we stop a little bit to take some of them. So I think that's all I wanted to say to introduce the webinar. And now I gladly leave the floor to Claudia. So Claudia, over to you. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Maria. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Okay, now you can see.
Yes, we can see it very well. Thank you.
So, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining today's session. My name is Claudia Suarez, and today I will be talking, as Maria said, about the ISO 40001 and its role as an instrument to promote the green transition in the European Union. Before we begin, let me brief introduce myself. I'm a currently business administration student. 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to participate in the ISO TC 207 program through the ISO Young Professional Program. This was my first introduction to environmental standardization and to the work that goes into developing international standards. Since then, I have continued my involvement through UNIT, the Spanish national standardization body, supporting the development of the ISO 40001. And this is one of the reasons why I want to focus today's session on this ISO 40001. First, we will look at environmental management within the broader context of the European green transition. Then we will discuss environmental management system, often referred to the EMS, and understand why organizations use them. After that, we will explore how ISO 40001 works in practice, including some of its most important requirements. We will also examine the plan do check act cycle, which is the foundation of the standard. Finally, we will discuss how ISO 40001 can support policy implementation and review a practical case study that illustrates how the standard works in a real organizational context. And at the end, we will have time for discussion and questions. To understand why ISO 40001 matter, we will first need to understand the broader context. The European Union has committed itself to becoming climate neutral by 2050. This ambition is reflected in initiatives such as the European Green Deal and a wide range of environmental and sustainability policies. The objective is not only to reduce greenhouse gas emission, but also to transform the way our economies operate. These include reducing pollution, improving resource efficiency, promoting circular economy principles, and protecting biodiversity. However, achieving this objective requires more than political commitment. Government can establish targets and legislation, but organizations are ultimately responsible for implementing many of the actions that will make this goal a reality. This is why environmental management becomes so important. Organizations need practical tools that help them translate environmental ambition into everyday decision and operational practice. Environmental management has become increasingly important for organizations of all size and sector. Today, organizations face a wide range of environmental pressure. Climate change is affecting supply chains, operation, and resource availability. Natural resources are becoming scarcer. Pollution remains a significant challenge in many regions, and at the same time, organizations face increasing expectation from regulators, customers, investors, and society. A stakeholder want organization not only to comply with environmental legislation, but also to actively demonstrate environmental responsibility. In fact, according to ISO, environmental management is now considered a core responsibility of organization rather than an optional activity. This means that the environmental consideration must become part of the strategic decision making and day-to-day operation. Many organizations already have environmental commitment. They publish sustainability reports, they announce a climate target, they commit to reducing emission or improving resource efficiency. However, making commitment is often the easy part. The real challenge here is the implementation. Some of the questions are: how do organizations actually achieve this goal? How they know where they are making progress? How they prioritize environmental issues? And how they ensure that sustainability is integrated into daily operation? This gap between ambition and implementation is one of the reasons why management systems are so valuable. They provide a structure, consistency, and accountability. Oops, sorry. Organizations often face a number of practical questions. As we can see, what are our environmental impact? What environmental regulation apply to us? Which risks should we prioritize? Where should we invest our resources? And how do we measure the improvement? This question may sound simple, but for many organizations, they can be quite complex. Environmental management systems provide a systematic way of answering this question rather than making decisions in an ad hoc manner. Organization establish process that help them to identify priorities, assign responsibility, and monitor performance over the whole time. So what exactly is an environmental management system? An environmental management system is a framework that helps organizations manage their interaction with the environment in a plain and systematic way. It is important to understand that the environmental management system is not simply a document or a certification. It is a management approach. Just as organizations manage their finance or quality performance, they can also manage their environmental performance. An environmental management system includes organizational structure, roles and responsibility, planning process, operational control, monitoring system, mechanisms, and continuous improvement. The objective is to move from reacting to environmental problems toward proactively managing environmental impact. Environmental management systems generate benefits that go far beyond environmental protection. From an environmental management perspective, organizations can reduce waste, improve energy efficiency, reduce emissions, and make better use of natural resources. But there are also significant business benefits. Many organizations achieve cost saving through lower energy consumption and reduced waste generation. Operational efficiency often improves because processes become more structured and better monitored. Organization can also strengthen relationship with customer regulator and investor. And in some cases, environmental performance can even become a competitive advantage. So therefore, environmental management should not be seen as a cost, but rather as an investment that can generate both environmental and business value. This brings us to the ISO 40001. The ISO 40001 is the world's most widely used international standard for environmental management system. It provides organizations with a framework for managing environmental responsibility in a systematic way. One of the reasons for its success is the flexibility. It can be applied to organizations of any size, in any sector, and in any country. Another important characteristic is that the ISO 40001 is voluntary. Organizations choose to implement it because they see value in doing so. It is also based on a principle of continual improvement. So the objective is not a perfection from day one. Instead, organizations are expected to improve their environmental performance over the time through a structured and systematic approach. At this point, we may ask ourselves a simple question. If ISO 40001 is voluntary, why do so many organizations decide to implement it? There are several reasons. First, organizations want to improve their environmental performance. They want to reduce waste, emission, and resource consumption. Second, they want to ensure compliance with environmental legislation. Environmental regulations are becoming increasingly complex, and organizations need a systematic way to manage them. Third, organizations want to reduce risks. Environmental incidents can have significant financial, legal, and reputational consequences. And finally, many organizations see the ISO 40001 as a way to demonstrate their environmental commitment to customer, investment, and society. So in some sectors, certification can even become a competitive advantage or a requirement for participating in supply chains. So how ISO 40000 actually work? The standard follow that we call a management system approach. Instead of focusing on isolated environmental action, it creates a structured process that organizations follow continuously. The process begins with understanding the organization and its context. Then leadership establishes direction and priorities. Risk and opportunities are identified. So the four objective has to be established. Then operational control are implemented, and performance has to be monitored. And finally, the organization reviews results and identify new opportunity for improvement. This cycle repeat continuously. The goal is not simply to maintain performance, but to improve it over the time. One of the most important innovations introduced in the ISO 40001 is the concept of organizational context. Before taking action, organizations need to understand themselves. This means analyzing internal issues that may affect environmental performance. For example, organizational culture. Does the organization genuinely care about environmental performance? Or is sustainability treated as a secondary issue? Resources are also important because does the organization have enough people, budget, and technical expertise? Also, process and capability must also be considered. An organization with a strong management system will often find it easier to implement ISO 40001 than one starting from scratch. Understanding these internal factors helps organization design an environmental management system that is realistic and effective. Also, organization must understand their external environment. Environmental performance does not exist in isolation. So organizations operate with a broader economic, social, and regulatory context. Regulation are an obvious example. Environmental legislation can strongly influence organizational priorities. Market conditions are another factor because customers increasingly expect environmental responsible product and service. Also, environmental conditions themselves can also create challenge. For example, through flood or resource scarcity may directly affect operation. And finally, organizations need to understand a stakeholder expectation because this expectation often shape environmental priorities and future obligations. By analyzing these both internal and external issues, organizations can make better environmental decisions. ISO 40001 places significant emphasis on interested parties. Interested parties are individuals or groups that can affect or be affected by an organization activities. Some example are customer, regulator, employees, investor, local community, and non-governmental organization. Different stakeholders have different expectations. So regulator expect legal compliance. Customer, for example, may expect sustainable product. Investor increasingly expect a strong ESG performance. Local community may expect organization to minimize noise, pollution, and other impact. An important point is that some of these expectations can become compliance obligation. Therefore, understanding interested parties is not only about communication, but also about risk management. This is one of the core concepts of ISO 40001. Environmental aspects are elements of an organization activities that interact with the environment. Environmental impact are the resulting change to the environment. Let me give you some example. For example, energy consumption is an environmental aspect. The associated impact could be greenhouse gas emission. Water consumption is also an aspect. The impact could be pressure on local water resource. Waste generation is an aspect. The impact could be land pollution or resource depletion. The objective of ISO 40001 is to identify this aspect systematically and determine which ones are most significant. One significant aspect have been identified. Organization can establish, control, and improve their action. Another important innovation introduced in the 2015 version of the ISO 40001 is risk-based thinking. Traditionally, environmental management focused mainly on environmental impact, but today organizations must also consider risk and opportunities. Environmental risks may include pollution incidents, resource shortages, and non-compliance with regulation. Compliance risk may result in fine or legal consequence, but for example, business risk may affect competitiveness or reputation. However, organizations should not focus only on risk. Opportunities are equally important. For example, investing in energy efficiency may reduce costs and emissions simultaneously. Adopting a circular economy principle may create a new business opportunity. So therefore, the ISO 40001 encourage organizations to think strategically about environmental management. One significant aspect, risk and opportunity have been identified. Organizations need objectives because objectives provide direction. Without objective, improvement becomes difficult to measure. The ISO 40001 required objective to be measurable whenever possible. Some examples include reducing energy consumption by 10%, reducing water use by 20%, or reducing waste generation by 15%. Objectives should not simply exist on a paper. They need to be monitored, reviewed, and supported by action plan. In practice, environmental objectives transform environmental ambition into measurable target. This is one of the reasons why the ISO 40001 is such a practical standard. One of the biggest changes introduced in ISO 40001 concerns leadership. Environmental management is no longer considered the sole responsibility of the environmental department. Top management must be actively involved. Leaders are responsible for providing resources, supporting improvement, and integrating environmental management into business processes. Why is this so important? Because without leadership commitment, environmental initiatives often remain isolated and underfunded. When leadership becomes involved, environmental objectives become the part of strategic decision making. So this increases the likelihood of achieving a meaningful result. Finally, organizations need people. Even the best management system will fail if employees do not understand their responsibilities. ISO 40001 therefore requires organizations to provide adequate resources and ensure competence. Employees need the knowledge and skill necessary to perform their environmental responsibility. For example, awareness is equally important. Employees should understand how their action influence environmental performance. Environmental management is not only the responsibility of managers, it depends on the daily action of everyone in the organization. This is why ISO 40001 places such a strong emphasis on competence, awareness, and engagement. Once the objectives have been established, organization need to implement operational control. Operational control are the practical measures used to manage environmental impact. They help ensure that activities are carried out consistently and in accordance with environmental requirements. Some examples include a waste management procedure, chemical handling procedure, energy management practice, and emergency response plan. Let me give you an example. If an organization identifies hazardous chemicals as a significant environmental aspect, it cannot simply hope that employees will handle them correctly. It must be established procedure, responsibility, and control. Operational control transform environmental planning into everyday practice. This is where ISO 40001 start becoming visible in the daily operation of an organization. One of the most important principles in management is that what get measured get managed. Organizations therefore need to monitor environmental performance. Monitoring allows organizations to understand whether they are achieving their objective. Typical indicators include energy consumption, water waste, waste generation, and emission. For example, if an organization has established an objective to reduce energy consumption by 10%, it must collect data and evaluate progress regularly. Without measurement, without measurement, improvement become impossible to verify. So, monitoring and also help organizations to identify problems early and take corrective action before they become significant issues. Monitoring tells us what is happening, but audit helps us to understand why it is happening. Internal audit are a key component of the ISO 40001. Their purpose is not to punish employees or identify someone to blame. Instead, audit help organizations verify whether processes are functioning as intended. They also identify opportunities for improvement. In addition, top management must periodically review the environmental management system. During management reviews, leaders evaluate performance, objective, risk, resource, and future priorities. So this ensures that environmental management remain aligned with the organizational strategy. One of the most important concepts within the ISO 40001 is continual improvement. Environmental management is not a one-time project. It is an ongoing process. Organizations are expected to identify non-conformities, implement corrective action, and continuously improve their performance. The objective is not perfection, the objective is progress. Over time, organizations should become more efficient, reduce environmental impact, and improve compliance. The idea of continually improvement is one of the reasons why the ISO 40001 has remained relevant for so many years. Everything we have discussed so far can be summarized through the plan do, check, act cycle, often referred to as PDCA. This cycle is the foundation of the ISO 40001. In the planning phase, organizations identify environmental issues, assess risk and opportunities, and establish objectives. In the doing phase, They implement action and operational control. In the checking phase, they monitor results and evaluate performance. And finally, in the acting phase, they correct problems and introduce improvement. Then the cycle begins again. So let us imagine an organization that want to reduce energy consumption. During the planning phase, it establishes a target. During the implementation, it introduced efficiency measure, and during checking, it measured energy use, and during acting, it analyzed result and adjust its approach. This continuous cycle creates a culture of learning and improvement. At this point, I would like to shift our perspective slightly. Until now, we have looked at ISO 40001 from the perspective of organization, but ISO 40001 can also be viewed from the perspective of public policy. Public policies define objectives. Government establish environmental priorities and regulatory frameworks. So, however, policies alone do not automatically produce results. Organizations need practical tools that help them implement that objective. This is where standards play an important role. A standard provide a structured framework that organization can use to translate policy objective into operational practice. In other words, policies define where we want to go, and a standard help organization understand how to get there. This is one important point. So in this table, it illustrated how ISO 40001 supports several key European environmental priorities. Let us look at a few examples. Climate neutrality requires organizations to reduce emission and improve energy efficiency. So ISO 40001 help organizations identify emission source, establish objectives, and monitor progress. Circular economy policies encourage resource efficiency and waste reduction. So the ISO 40001 support this goal through environmental aspect analysis and life cycle thinking. The zero pollution ambition focus on reducing environmental impact. Again, ISO 40001 help organizations to identify, control, and reduce that impact. Biodiversity protection can also be supported by evaluating environmental impact and implementing preventive measures. What we see here is that ISO 40001 does not replace legislation. Instead, it complements legislation by helping organizations implement environmental objectives systematically. Let us now move from the theory to practice. This example comes from a small manufacturing company implementing ISO 40001. The organization faced several challenges. It had a high energy consumption. It had received complaints from neighborhood residents regarding noise. It also wants to improve environmental performance and ensure compliance with environmental requirements. These are fairly typical challenges that many organizations face. Rather than immediately investing in expensive technology, the company first applied the logic of the ISO 40001. It identified environmental aspects such as the energy use or the noise emission. It analyzed risk. It established priorities, and it defined environmental objectives. The organization identified two main objectives: First, reducing energy consumption by 10%. Second, reducing noise level to below 60 decibel. To achieve this objective, it established action plans, it monitors performance, it engages external specialists, it implements technical improvement, and a regulatory review result. So what is important here is that the ISO 40001 did not begin with technology, it began with management. The organization first understand the problem and only then implement solution. This is one of the most valuable lessons of the ISO 40001. Several important lessons emerge from this example. First, leadership commitment is essential. Without support from management, environmental initiatives often struggle to succeed. Second, objectives must be clear and measurable. Third, employee involvement is critical. Fourth, Third, employee involvement is critical. Environmental performance depends on people through the organization. Fourth, monitoring and measure provide evidence of progress. And finally, continual improvement ensure that organizations keep moving forward. More broadly, this example demonstrates how standards help bridge the gap between environmental ambition and environmental implementation. They create a common language that helps organizations, regulators, and stakeholders work towards shared goals. And before concluding, I would like to highlight 5 key messages from today's session. First, the green transition requires effective implementation, not ambitious target. Second, ISO 40001 provides a structured framework that helps organizations manage environmental responsibility systematically. Third, the plan do check at cycles, support continual improvement. Fourth, a standard can play an important role in supporting the achievement of EU sustainability objectives. And finally, ISO 40001 help organizations transform environmental commitment into measurable action and result. So ultimately, the success of the green transition will depend not only on policies, but also on the tools that help organizations implement them in practice. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will now be happy to answer any question or hear your thought and experience regarding the environmental management system. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Claudia, for your presentation. It was very, very clear. In the meantime, while you were presenting, we've received 2 questions in the chat. Actually, one question and a comment. So maybe I can read them for you, and you can address them. So the first point is a question from Cyril, who writes, you said ISO 14001 to be successful. So can you give some data, some numbers on how many people or how many companies use this or sell this standard in terms of specifying why you say is successful, if you have any data who can support, let's say, this statement?
Well, I don't have an exact data of how many companies use the self of a standard, but I think I can later share a document with this data, but
Mhm.
at this moment I don't.
Okay. If you retrieve some data on this, you can send, as a follow-up to the presentation, and we can
Yeah.
put it on we can put it on the repository with all the webinar materials. And then we have a comment regarding the edition of the standard that was object of your presentation. One of our attendees said, I thought this would be referencing ISO 14001 2026 edition, not 2015. So I don't know if you have any comments on this.
Yeah, unfortunately, development standard is a slow action. On November, we had the last November, we had the plenary of the ISO TC 207 environmental management, and we start to work in the development of the ISO 40001 2026. So nowadays it's not available for everyone, but I hope in the future it will be.
Okay, so it's still in development, and so
Yeah,
that's why you don't have, public information that can be
yeah,
shared officially in a public event. Okay, so maybe next time when it's
yeah.
completed, we can have a follow-up webinar on this. And then I see now a follow-up comment on if you have on the top of your mind, or if you can provide later on any negative examples, so any negative experience of companies or categories of companies that actually are not able to apply this standard.
Well, I'm going to go um, to the slide. One moment, because I
Mhm.
think, okay, I don't know. Can you see?
We still see the thank you slide. Maybe you can stop sharing and
Oh,
reshare
okay.
again.
Okay. Okay, now can you see my screen?
Yes, we see a slide on leadership and commitment.
Okay. So regarding your question, normally, if in a company the the action that ISO 40001 has, if in a company the leader of or the top management don't take the responsibility to include to include in their job these rules, probably the company will not success with this ISO 40001 standard, because as I said, top management plays a central role. Also, obviously, the rest of the worker, but the top management is, I think, for me, the most important part of to establish this standard in your company. So if their activity is not so successful, probably the company will fail on this topic.
Hmm. Okay, yeah, that's a good point, Claudia. Thank you. Um, okay, I don't see other questions in the chat. Let me check. In the Q&A box, also we don't have any. So I think we have come to the end of the session. I would like to thank everyone who joined this morning, and thank you, Claudia, first of all, as well, for providing this presentation. Maybe we can organize, as mentioned, a follow-up on the updated version of the standard in the coming months. And thanks all again, and have a nice week ahead. Goodbye. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.